All right, so we're back, and you know what that means, right? It's time for another deep dive.
Round 2.
Yeah. Last time we were kind of just like dipping our toes into the whole world of Hong Kong influencers, just kind of skimming the surface. But this
This time we're going in deep.
yeah, things are about to get a little bit more, shall we say, intense.
Yeah, a little spicy.
So last time we talked broadly about, the whole landscape.
Big picture.
But this time we're focusing on a specific individual, Martin Owie.
Also known as Sai-Chak Wong.
Exactly, Sai-Chak Wong. And the source we're using for this deep dive it's pretty interesting, actually. It reads like a digital SOS almost.
Right.
It's specifically addressed to people in Germany.
Particularly Düsseldorf, it seems.
Right, yeah. Düsseldorf. Like someone really wanted to raise the alarm about this guy, Owie, and they claim to have, some firsthand experience.
Right.
So let's start with the basics then.
Right.
Who is Martin Owie, according to the source?
Well, according to the source, he is originally from Hong Kong.
Okay.
And he's currently residing in, you guessed it, Düsseldorf.
Okay, so that tracks with the target audience of the source.
Exactly.
They're worried about this guy who is right there in their community.
Right.
So he lives in Germany, but is originally from Hong Kong. What else?
He also claims British citizenship.
Okay, interesting.
And he runs, get this, a Cantonese YouTube channel.
Cantonese.
Cantonese. With very, strongly anti-Chinese government content.
Which I guess, given everything that's happened in Hong Kong since, 2019?
Yeah.
It's not totally unexpected to find someone in that headspace, right?
Right, but the source claims that's just the beginning.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, there's always more.
Okay, hit me with it. What else did this source say about Martin Owie?
Well, they accuse him of spreading, get this, fabricated information.
Okay.
And even conspiracy theories.
All right, so we're starting to get into, the juicy stuff now.
It's getting interesting.
Yeah, so the source says he's making stuff up, basically.
And not just, little white lies, but, big, sweeping narrative.
Oh, like full-on alternative realities type stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so the source is painting him as, a bit of a fabulist.
To put it mildly, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they also say he's spreading conspiracy theories, which is like a whole other level of crazy. What kind of conspiracy theories are we talking about here?
Well, they don't go into specifics in this source, but they do claim that he's basically created, an echo chamber.
An echo chamber.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I get what you mean. So, he's surrounded himself with people who just agree with everything he says.
Right. And anyone who dares to question him is instantly labeled like a CCP puppet or something.
Oh, so, dissent is not tolerated in Owie's world.
Not at all.
And the source is saying he doesn't just, ignore criticism. He actively silences it.
Exactly.
How does he do that?
Well, the source alleges that he goes as far as doxing his critics.
Doxing? Whoa, hold on. Doxing is a pretty serious accusation.
It is.
For those who don't know, doxing is basically when you publish someone's personal information online.
Right, like their home address, phone number.
Yeah, stuff like that.
With the intention of, inciting harassment or even violence against them.
Right. It's basically online vigilantism at its worst.
And it can have some really, really serious real-world consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. So this source is saying Owie is not just, a harmless internet crank. He's potentially putting people in danger.
That's what they're alleging, yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't stop there.
Oh, there's more.
There's always more.
Okay, so we've got these allegations of fake news and conspiracy theories and even doxing. I mean, that's some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly.
No, definitely not. But let's break it down a bit, shall we?
Sure.
The source, they claim that Owie's been spreading this fabricated information and these conspiracy theories. But how can we actually verify that? I mean, a lot of his content is in Cantonese, right?
You bring up a really important point. The language barrier, it definitely adds a whole other layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Right.
It makes it harder for fact checkers, even for authorities to monitor his content.
So it's this potentially harmful information could be circulating, but it's harder to address because of the language.
It's kind of like a closed loop almost.
Yeah, like a little bubble where misinformation can just fester and grow.
Exactly. And misinformation often thrives in those kinds of information bubbles because it's harder to challenge it. It's harder to debunk it.
Almost like a self-contained ecosystem,
Right.
Okay. So we've got the language barrier making it hard to monitor and verify this content. What about the doxing allegations?
Well, doxing, as we mentioned, is a particularly harmful form of online harassment.
Right. It's not just like name calling. It's actually putting people at risk.
It's exposing their personal information. It can lead to real-world harm. It's actually, illegal in many places,
Yeah.
including the EU.
Right.
And most online platforms, like YouTube, for example, they have very clear policies against doxing.
But you mentioned earlier that the language barrier makes it hard to monitor content.
Mm-hmm.
So even if these platforms have rules against doxing, wouldn't it be tougher to catch it and enforce those rules when the content is in a language that they might not even understand?
That's a very valid point.
Right.
And it does highlight the need for these platforms to really invest in more robust multilingual moderation.
Yeah.
Content review processes.
It's almost like they need like a whole team of multilingual moderators.
Basically, yeah.
Just to keep up with everything that's going on in all these different languages.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the fake news, we've got the conspiracy theories, we've got the doxing. The source also claims that OE was profiting from selling masks during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and they even say that he retaliated against a customer who complained about something.
Right.
I mean, is there any way to verify these claims?
Well, I mean, it would require digging into his financial activities during that period.
Right, which I imagine is probably not easy to do.
Not without access to his records, no. But the source does mention a specific customer who publicly complained. So there might be a digital trail of this interaction somewhere.
Okay.
Perhaps on social media or online forums.
So if we could find that digital trail, it might actually give us some insights into whether he was actually engaged in any unethical business practices.
Or even illegal ones.
Right.
It's all about following those digital breadcrumbs.
Yeah, it's like a digital detective story.
Exactly.
But also it's worth noting, right, that the pandemic it created a very unique environment. Like people were scared.
Right.
They were uncertain.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of fear and uncertainty going around.
Yeah, and unfortunately some individuals they saw that as an opportunity to take advantage of people.
You profit from the chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if someone like Owie with a large online following, if he was doing that, that's pretty messed up.
Yeah, it would raise some very serious ethical questions.
Absolutely. But let's move on to another allegation.
Okay.
This one's particularly concerning.
All right.
The source claims that Owie was making false predictions about Hong Kong's future.
Mm-hmm.
And that these predictions actually led people to make some pretty major life decisions.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Like emigrating.
Oh, wow.
Or moving large sums of money abroad.
That's huge.
Yeah. And this is where the consequences of misinformation become really, really alarming.
Right. Absolutely. People make decisions based on the information that they have.
Right.
And if that information is intentionally distorted or fabricated,
right,
it can have devastating impacts on their lives.
Yeah. I mean, imagine uprooting your entire family, leaving your home, your job, everything you know, based on a prediction that turns out to be completely false.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And the source even claims that some of Owei's followers, they face scrutiny because their financial transactions were flagged as potential money laundering.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's a serious accusation.
It is.
And it really underscores the importance of financial transparency and getting responsible advice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Owie was encouraging his followers to move their money in ways that raise red flags, that could have legal repercussions for both him and the people who followed his instructions.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is starting to feel less like, harmless online chatter and more like a deliberate manipulation of a vulnerable community.
Right.
People who are looking for answers, looking for guidance.
And it brings us back to that question of intent.
Yeah.
Was Owie simply expressing his opinions, however controversial they might be, or was he intentionally misleading his audience for personal gain or to advance a particular agenda?
Right. Like what was his end game here? And to answer that, I think we need to look closer at this source's claim that Owie misrepresented his connections to the UK Conservative Party.
Right.
They allege that he was like flaunting these communications with the party to create this illusion of influence and legitimacy.
Right.
So if we could actually verify those communications, it would reveal whether he was exaggerating his connections or engaging in outright deception.
Yeah, and that could give us some clues about his motivations.
Right? Like, was he trying to gain political clout? Was he using the Conservative Party's name to boost his own credibility? Or was it something else entirely?
Exactly.
It's like a puzzle.
It is.
With all these different pieces, and we need to examine each one carefully to get a clear picture of what's really going on.
Right. And speaking of pieces of the puzzle, the source also points out that despite claiming to be British, he has never actually lived in the UK.
Oh.
He's currently residing in Germany, which seems a bit contradictory to his self-proclaimed national pride, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it does make you wonder, like what does it really mean to be British? Is it just about holding a passport, or is there something more to it?
It's an interesting question about national identity.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting, right, how always alleged actions seem to clash with the values of a free society that he claims to champion.
Right.
Like he advocates for freedom of speech. Yet, according to the source, he actively silences and attacks those who disagree with him. It's a pretty glaring contradiction, wouldn't you say?
It's a bit hypocritical, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he wants to have his cake and eat it too.
Exactly. Like
Right.
he wants all the benefits of a free society, but doesn't seem to want to extend those same freedoms to others.
And that's the hypocrisy that the source seems most concerned about. They're essentially asking, can a society built on freedom tolerate someone who exploits those very freedoms to undermine and harm others?
That's a heavy question, man. It's like a fundamental tension that we're grappling with here. How do we balance individual rights with the need to protect society from those who would abuse those rights for their own harmful purposes?
Right.
It's a question that's been challenging philosophers and lawmakers for centuries. And it's even more complex now in the digital age, because what might have been just like a local dispute in the past can now escalate into a global controversy with just like the click of a button.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to Martineau. Whether or not all the allegations against him are true, his case, it serves as a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of unchecked online influence. It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant, to be critical thinkers, and discerning consumers of information, especially in this wild west of the internet.
Absolutely. We need to be mindful of the power dynamics that are at play online. We need to be questioning sources. We need to be verifying information and be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers or presents themselves as the ultimate authority.
Right. And we're back.
Back again.
One last time for this deep dive. It's been quite the journey.
I've covered a lot of ground.
We have. We've talked about fake news, conspiracy theories, doxing, even some shady business practices.
And all this from just one guy.
Just one guy, Martineau. But we also talked about some bigger issues too, right? Like the challenges of fighting misinformation, especially when you've got these language barriers online. And how do you balance like freedom of speech with responsible behavior online?
That's the big question.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And we also talked about how online influence can have real world consequences. Like people's lives are affected by this stuff.
Absolutely.
So now I want to shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about the potential legal ramifications of all this. The source specifically mentioned that OE is wanted by Hong Kong's, their IC.
Right, the Independent Commission Against Corruption.
Exactly, for inciting election boycotts. I mean, that's a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, and it shows just how seriously they're taking his activities, his online activities. And it raises some interesting legal questions, too, like about jurisdiction.
Oh,
extradition.
Hold on, extradition. Like we could be talking about an international legal battle here.
It's definitely a possibility.
Wow.
I mean, it would depend on the specifics of any extradition treaty between, Germany and Hong Kong,
right,
and the nature of the charges, of course.
But it's crazy to think that even though this is all playing out online, that it could have these offline consequences in a completely different country.
Yeah, the internet doesn't erase national borders,
Right.
right?
It doesn't.
What you do online can have real-world consequences offline, sometimes in unexpected places.
Yeah. We also talked about how the source claimed that Oi's actions, they constitute a form of terrorism. And that's a word that's caused a lot of debate, I think, among our listeners.
It's a loaded term.
It is, it is. But it's important to remember that, terrorism have a very specific legal definition. And it can vary from country to country.
Right.
But generally it involves like acts of violence or threats of violence that are meant to like create fear and intimidate a population or a government.
Right. For political purposes.
Right. For political purposes.
Right.
So the question is, do always alleged actions, even if they're ethically questionable, do they actually meet that definition of terrorism?
That's a really complex legal question.
Yeah.
And it's one that would ultimately be decided in a court of law.
Right.
But it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough one.
It is.
But I think this whole case, it really just it highlights this tension that we have between free speech and public safety.
Absolutely. And it's a tension that we're all navigating together in this digital age.
Yeah. So I guess the question for you, our listeners, is how has this deep dive, how has it changed the way you think about the information you consume online? How does it make you think about freedom of speech and the responsibility that comes with that? Because we've seen firsthand how online influence, it can be used to spread misinformation, to incite harassment, to potentially even manipulate people. And we've also seen how difficult it can be to hold those in positions of power online accountable, especially when you've got language barriers, jurisdictional issues, all that stuff. It makes it so much more complicated.
It really does.
So I think the takeaway here is that we can't just be passive consumers of online content. We have to be critical thinkers. We have to question our sources, verify information, be mindful of our own behavior online.
Right.
Because the internet, it's given us incredible access to information, the ability to connect with people all over the world. But it's also opened up these new avenues for manipulation and abuse.
Absolutely.
And it's up to all of us to navigate this digital landscape responsibly, ethically, and with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.